Alright, Mun landing tutorial. Let's do this. Also, please like and subscribe so I can fix my headphones. Right there. And if you do, I'll also show you a picture of a really cute kitten. There it is. Wow, so adorable. Let's get started with this video. Alright, so we are out of the atmosphere. I just want to make sure we enter into our orbit. Now that we have a nice little arc going here, I'm just going to use the prograde marker, make a nice little circle around our Mun. I'm going to also take our maneuver node, make sure we get our ship fixed over to the maneuver node on the nav ball. So we want to make sure that meets that. And there's our Mun, that's our target. Now that we're approaching our burn time, we're going to wait till that hits 0 and then we'll start burning. Alright, now that we've made our burn, we should be nicely around Kerbin's orbit. So now that we're around Kerbin, what we want to do, right-click the Mun and set it as your target. So we see the Mun right here. We're going to assume that when we burn here, the Mun will probably be around here too. So we're going to go ahead and increase that prograde marker here for us. And we'll be able to see where the Mun will actually be. So we were pretty close. Not perfect, but that's okay. So we'll go ahead and we'll drag this little node around until we can get into a good orbit around the Mun. Usually what I like to do, and this is just me personally, but I like to get a nice little curve on our flyby the Mun. So you see that little curve right there? I like these because it makes it easier to retrograde and then circle around the Mun a little bit faster. So we'll go ahead and get into our maneuver node position and get ready to make our burn. Alright, and we are off onto the Mun. And there you have the Mun coming over Kerbin's horizon. And there you have it. We are set to rendezvous with the Mun. So what we're going to do now that we have our trajectory here, we're going to warp ahead just after we get into the Mun's sphere of influence, so we can be able to update ourselves on what we need to do next as far as circularizing around the Mun's orbit. Alright, so you see here, we are in a collision course with the Mun, and that is okay. So what we'll do here is we're just going to make a small change in our maneuver. Very, very subtle, but we want to keep it really close to the Mun because we want to actually land on the Mun. So we're going to go ahead and move over to our maneuver node. Now this is a 2-second burn. We should still have plenty of fuel in those upper stages there. We still have 6 seconds of burn time. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm not going to use the full tank. I'm actually going to release the tank with just a little fuel left inside so we can go ahead and let it crash into the Mun. But our spacecraft has plenty of Delta V to circularize around this moon and then get us back to Kerbin when we're ready. There you go. And as we watch that come down, we'll go ahead and keep an eye on our orbit and see where it's going to go. We don't want to overshoot the moon. So I want this blue line to actually intersect with the moon still. There we go. That should be perfect. We're going to separate from our stage here. We're just going to say goodbye to this. And that stage will gracefully crash into the Mun, and as for us, we're going to circularize around the Mun. We'll go ahead and meet up with our maneuver node here again. And as you see here, the burn time is much smaller, it's only 0.3 seconds, so we want to be very careful not to overshoot. Otherwise, we're going to have a big arc right here, and it's going to be a lot harder for our little Mun lander to actually reach. And there we go. We are lined up with our orbit. That's basically where we want to be. So now that we have our orbit looking really good, curving around the Mun, what we need to do now, we need to circularize. So what I like to do is I like to go to the periapsis right here. So you see it on the orbit. Click that, add a maneuver, and then we're going to add lots of retrograde to this. We're going to go for a really tight orbit here. I want to make sure that our lander is as close to our capsule as possible when it ascends. And then we can fix the tilt in its orbit easy. So if you are worried about the tilted and you don't think you can make it with a tilted orbit, don't worry, I'll show you how to fix it. But if you want the extra challenge, keep your orbit tilted and see how you do. As for this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to fix the tilt so that when you feel more comfortable, you can get some practice in and then you can start working with tilted orbits. Alright, so as we approach our maneuver node here, this is just to circularize around the Mun. So once we do that, we'll show you how to fix the tilt. There we go. So this is how I like to do it. So if you notice, our orbit is on a tilt. Try to get the part where your orbit crosses over the Mun's equator, or whatever it is that you're orbiting. When it crosses the equator, add a maneuver node. You can see where this line is. This is a good indicator where the equator could be. And then with these anti-normal and normal burns on the maneuver node, you can go ahead and just kind of tilt that until it fixes the tilt. Now, when you do this, you are adding energy into your orbit. So if you notice here, our arc has expanded quite a bit. So you're going to want to do a little bit of adjustment till you get the orbit that you want. All right, this is just a short 2-second burn, so you don't want your engines to go at full blast. So we're just going to go nice and slow and let the orbit fix itself. And there you go. And that's how you fix the tilt on your orbit when you're orbiting a celestial body. So now the next part you're wondering is how to actually land on the Mun, and how to land on an area that you actually want to land on. So for example, if we want to say maybe land on one of these little craters here, we're going to have to make a few considerations. First off, the Mun is rotating, so as you're descending, the Mun will rotate beneath you, and so your area that you want to land on is going to shift as you are descending to the Mun. In this case, I want to land on one of these craters because when you land on those craters, it does give you a nice little view of Kerbin over here, and that's what I want. I want to be able to see Kerbin on the horizon, so we're going to get into a prograde position. We're also going to extend our solar panels here. And that's not a bad looking spaceship. Let's go ahead and start making our planned descent. We're gonna land right here where these two craters are touching. We're gonna land on the left one. That should give us a good view of Kerbin because the right side of the crater is gone, and that should give a nice little dip to look over the horizon for us. We're going to add a maneuver, and we're gonna hit retrograde, and we're gonna go all the way down. Now, as you notice, landing spot is going to shift over time, and I'll show you what I mean. Alright, so some time has passed, and if you notice, our landing has shifted. That's because the Mun is rotating below us, so we need to take that into consideration when we make our landing. So we're going to go ahead and take our maneuver node, and we're going to shift it even a little bit over, so we're going to purposely overshoot our target and start making our descent so that when our craft gets closer, we'll be able to have a nice little landing that lands right where we want it to be. I do want to do something a little bit different with this landing. I want to give it, instead of having such a steep arc, I do want to give us just a little bit of leeway here so that we kind of fly over our target. That will give us a little bit more control here, where we can add a second maneuver node and create a more precise drop when we get closer to the bottom. Just kind of play around with some of these maneuver nodes and just kind of get that precise landing that we're looking for. But we're probably going to aim it just to the edge of the second crater. Alright, we are now descending into the Mun, so this is our new trajectory. We do want to make sure that we just overshoot it just a bit as we start making our descent here, and we'll adjust it as we get closer and closer to the Mun's surface, and we'll watch how much of this actual shift is appearing on our descent. There is that little bit of shift that I was telling you about. It's not too bad. I'm going to shift it just to the left, just a bit. So we're approaching our maneuver node now. We're going to burn for 10 seconds, and from this point on, we're going to be focusing more on the descent and slowing down our speeds after this burn. Alright, so far our descent is looking really good. So we want to shed all of our speed just as we get close to the surface, so we'll go ahead and start burning. We want to use as little of the stage on the actual lander as possible. Alrighty, our Mun lander is now working on its landing here. We want to make sure we want to keep that speed below 10 meters a second. There we go. And there we have it. We are now landed on the Mun. Kerbin is looking really good in the sky. We just have to clip into the ground a little bit. Look at that shot. That's actually really cool. Zoom up to our lander and get another good shot of that. Looks amazing. We're going to extend our ladder, and we'll go ahead and let Jebediah get all of the glory for the first Mun landing. There you go. Go ahead and turn on his cool neon lights here. We'll move on to our other Kerbal here. Blue Nebula, we get a nice little appearance here. Everybody's looking happy, excited to be on the Mun. The next thing we're going to want to do is plant that flag. We want a nice shot of our camp, and the background behind us should probably face our flag in this direction. There you go. First Mun landing. We do have some cargo that I've been wanting to unpack. We're going to make a small little Mun camp set down a solar panel. Seems like our little light post doesn't want to stand up. Well, I suppose the light can still work on its side. Well, alrighty then. There's our camp. Not the most glorious, at least not looking glorious with that lamp on its side like that, but it's no big deal. It still works, it's still functional. And overall, I'm really happy with it. Alright, so some of you are probably wondering, how do we get back? Start planning our ascent. So we know that our orbit is going clockwise around the Mun. So we're going to want to head toward the horizon. So from the perspective on the ground, we're going to want to fly toward the sun and Kerbin. So from the ground, it should look like this. So we're going to want to fly in this general direction. Sometimes this can be a little disorienting from the ground, but just make sure you get your bearings on what direction it is that you actually want to fly toward. In this case, we want to fly toward the sun, like Icarus. We should have named this craft the Icarus. Oh well. We'll go ahead and shoot straight up into the sky. That's the first thing I like to do personally, is go up. So we're gonna also use our RCS and we're gonna start facing ourselves toward the horizon there. Retract those landing gears and let's go ahead and start heading east. Let's keep an eye here on our orbit, and there we go. So we have reached the orbit of our capsule. So the next part we want to do is plan our circularization around the Mun. We should have enough delta V on board our craft here to be able to pull this off. So we have a 19-second burn ahead of us. Let's take a look at how much fuel. We have 79 seconds of burn time left, so we should have plenty of fuel to ascend and rendezvous back with our craft. What we want to do now is just catch up to our capsule. All we have to do is just take note of where our orbits are. So in this case, if you notice here, the capsule's orbit is lower than our own. So that means the capsule will be moving faster than we are, and we'll actually catch up behind our orbit here. We'll be coming around the Mun this way. Set our capsule there as our target. We're gonna go ahead and let the warp speed do its thing until our two spacecraft are close together. Alright, so we're getting pretty close to our capsules now. We want to get close to matching our target's speed. You want to make sure this part down here is on target. You want to be burning retrograde relative to your target. So you want to bring the speed. So this is the difference of speed between you and the target. You want to bring this as close to 0 as possible. So we'll bring our craft to a retrograde position relative to our target. And 0.4 meters a second, that's good enough. You don't need to make it perfect, but as close to 0 as possible. We're gonna want to go to a pro target position. We'll go ahead and start burning now. And what we're gonna be looking for is for these orbits to cross each other. And there you go. So here we have a spot where they are crossing a little bit. And we want to bring these two orange nodes as close together as possible. There you go. So if you want to speed up the process here, you can always add a radial maneuver, just a small one, a very small subtle burn, to bring these nodes a little closer together. And you can just play around with this as you need it. So in this case, if we play with our radial movements here, it will get us a lot closer to a 0.4 kilometers, and that should be a good distance away before we do another retrograde burn relative to our target. So we'll wait till we approach here, and we're going to do a very soft, slow burn since this is only 2 seconds of burn time. So the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to switch over to our retrograde position relative to our target here. And when we get to that node, we're going to want to get that 75.2 meters as close to 0 as possible. Alrighty, so here we are at 0.3 meters a second. That's pretty good. Doesn't need to be perfect at this point. We'll go ahead and switch over to a pro target position. At this point, we should be close enough. We can probably even see, yep, you can. So you can see our capsule at this point. Now that we're here, we don't need to be using our display staging. We can go ahead and switch over to docking mode and turn on the RCS. You can actually use your RCS at this point and just move your way over to the target. Just make sure that prograde marker is hovering over the nav ball like that, and you should be good. I'm going to switch over to a retrograde position. So we're going to just burn retrograde relative to our target. There we go. And that should bring us down to 0. And now you can hit the caps lock button and this will bring you to a fine control. You know if you're on the fine controls when these orange arrows here or these orange pointers turn blue. So we'll go ahead and do that now. There you go. So we're going to switch over to our other craft here. And we're going to select the docking port on our lander and hit that as target. And then we're going to move over here again, and we're going to hit a pro target on the maneuver node. If you are not using any kind of like SAS hardware on your craft, you will have to do this manually, and that's okay. All right, now that the capsule is facing our lander here, we're going to do the same thing here. So we're going to take the docking port, set it as the target, and then we're going to use the reaction wheels to align us with the capsule. And now that we're aligned, the next thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and turn our RCS back on again. And we're going to keep it on the fine controls. And we're going to slowly move forward at 0.3 meters a second. And as we do that, we're going to want to make sure as well that our prograde marker is right on top of our target marker. As you can see here, they are not aligned. So we're going to go ahead and make a few adjustments here to get them about as centered as you can possibly get them on the nav ball. And we'll go ahead and let the docking ports do all the work from here. Alrighty, so here we are now docked, and everything is looking fantastic. Very important, we're gonna want to take our crew and transfer them over to the capsule. We can go ahead and dump our capsule here and let it drift around the Mun. It'll be a nice little monument in space, if you will, of our achievements. We'll go ahead and say so long to our Mun lander here as we slowly move away from our capsule here. And we can even control the Mun lander, turn on its RCS, and just very gently drift away into the abyss. There you go. This little guy is now a permanent monument of the Mun for all eternity. As for our capsule here, we're going to go ahead and start getting ready for our return trip. In order to get back to Kerbin, what you're going to want to do, add the maneuver, and then you're going to add a very prograde heavy maneuver. And when we escape the Mun's sphere of influence, we're going to go into the retrograde. So that's going to cause us to lose some speed. That creates this nice little oval orbit here. And we're off. And there goes our little lander as we fly by it. So long, lander. It's been nice knowing you. So now that we've escaped the Mun's sphere of influence, we should have plenty of fuel left to be able to play around with here. If you notice right here at the apoapsis, it takes us right into Kerbin. That's exactly what we want. One thing to consider is if you burn here at the apoapsis from this distance from Kerbin, we will be moving quite fast through the atmosphere. So that's something we need to take into consideration so that we don't actually burn up on our way through the atmosphere. So we're going to want to slow down as we get closer to our periapsis. For now, we're going to go ahead and just do our quick little burn. It doesn't take much, it's a 3-second burn. And as you can see here, we're being very fuel efficient. That took almost no fuel at all to make that maneuver. And we can go ahead and fall back down to Kerbin. And look how far we've come. We're back to our home world with the Mun right there in the distance, looking pretty and majestic. It's kind of funny to think that our Mun lander is still orbiting our little moon over here. As we're getting closer, our speeds have increased dramatically. We'll start slowing down as soon as we get close to the atmosphere. And then once we do, we're going to go ahead and jettison this bottom stage. We just want to make sure that we are in a safe speed so that we don't explode on our re-entry back to Kerbin. And that should be good. We're going to go ahead and use our RCS just to move out of the way of this craft here. Alright, we are making some progress. We are approaching the atmosphere now. Stage over there should start exploding now as it loses its solar panels and just drops like a sack of potatoes. And our capsule is making a nice landfall here. Alright, we'll go ahead and drop the drogue chutes. We'll slow ourselves down just a little bit. We don't want to go too fast on these last little bits. We want to make sure that we bring down our speed here. We want to bring that down to below 10 meters a second. Any faster and you start to break your craft and can actually probably destroy the capsule that you're in if you're any faster than 10. So on the last 500 meters, we'll go ahead and let out the chutes. There we go. And there we have it. Our parachutes are out. Our craft is below 10 meters a second on its descent. So we know we're safe. We'll be making a nice little landing right here on this really cool sunrise. Hey guys, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell button for the next video. See you there!